Good afternoon. This is Faith Rosky with Business Arts and Events, and today is really a special interview for me today. Not only do I have Cherry Robertson from Pinnacle Treatment Centers.
Pinnacle Treatment Centers, yes.
And then I have my daughter here, Faith Rosky, who is a Barrett Honors College student from Arizona State University here, who is going to join in the conversation. Faith is a psychology major. And today we're going to focus in on the topic of alcohol and what's happening in today's society with alcohol. And ever since COVID, the numbers seem to be increasing with addiction and deaths. Maybe you can just start to address that.
So, we've seen, statistically, we've seen from 2021 to 2022 that alcohol accident-related fatalities have actually gone up by about 16%, which is, looking at the numbers, I can't remember the exact numbers right now, but I know that the difference is 190 more from one year to the next year, which is a big jump. 16% is a big amount. Another thing, I graduated with my bachelor's last year from Fresno State in sociology.
Congratulations.
Thank
to
you. One of the classes that I took, I actually wrote a paper about the impact of COVID-19 on the increase in alcohol use.
Amen to that.
And it's not something that just happened. It was a big deal. When COVID happened and we had the shelter in place, they shut down AA meetings. They shut down NA meetings. They shut down a lot of treatment programs because they deemed them as non-essential. Mostly medical stuff stayed open, but a lot of programs shut down or were unsure whether they could stay open or not. But AA and NA, which is, one of the most successful programs, even if it's not like a legitimate treatment program, it's one of the most successful programs in helping keep people sober. What happens when people can't go to those meetings? Well, guess what? They relapse.
Of course.
So we've seen a huge increase in relapses on not just alcohol, but all drugs during that time. But alcohol was a very big deal. One of the statistics that I found, one of the journal articles that I wrote my paper on had information about how it's not just regular people whose alcohol consumption increased, but they saw a huge increase in healthcare workers drinking alcohol and developing addictions. And it was huge because of the fact that, they mandated all these vaccines, which put a lot of stress on people. Do I want to take this vaccine? Do I want to risk getting COVID? They put these mandates out. People, do I choose between my job or my body and my right to get this vaccine? And then on top of that, we had all these people coming into hospitals with COVID, and families can't come in to visit these people. It put a lot of stress on our nurses and our doctors. And so I can't remember the name of the particular article it was, but they talked about how there was just this huge increase in alcohol use in our healthcare industry.
Right.
And it's just so sad because, alcohol is so socially acceptable, but it wreaks some of the most havoc on the body and the mind.
Mm-hmm. And what makes it the most dangerous is it's the most socially acceptable. Yeah.
Well, and we already know what happened with prohibition and why we don't make it illegal.
Right.
Why it has Surgeon General warnings and why we have an age limit and all that. But it doesn't change the fact that the social acceptability of it is what leads to people thinking, oh, you know what? I can have a little bit of alcohol and I'll be fine. Which, for some people, you can recreationally do that and it's not a big deal.
Right.
But the more you drink, the less control you have. Alcohol works heavily on the prefrontal cortex of the brain.
Oh, yeah.
That's the part of the brain that controls your executive functioning. That's the part of the brain that controls memory formation. That's the part of the brain that controls your self-control, your impulse control, decision making. All that happens in the prefrontal cortex. And when you put alcohol in the body, the frontal lobe is the part of the brain that is most affected by alcohol use.
Yep.
And it's so sad because we know all this, but it doesn't stop people from drinking. And because of the social acceptability of it, I can drink every night when I get off work to blow off steam and I'm not an addict. Well, are you sure? Do you depend upon that substance to help you decompress at the end of the day?
Right.
Because if
versus
you do, that's
versus like saying I'm going to have a meal and I'm just going to enjoy this wine with my meal and I'm going to be responsible about how I'm going to have like that glass, maybe two, and then stop. and that's the whole part. Faith, maybe you can address like what happened, during that time of COVID in college with alcohol, and talk about what your observations were.
Right. Okay. So what I was just thinking about is, so the increase in short form content that was being consumed during COVID was huge, obviously, because you're stuck inside, you're bored, so obviously you're going to be on social media, the short form content, so that immediate gratification and whatnot. And so now that things have started to pick back up, people have to be much more comfortable in their boredom, especially in my generation, and my generation is not as comfortable with boredom. You used to be in the car, okay, look out the window, whatever it is, or, do the raindrop race, and now you have these kids that need their iPad, whatnot. And so now, say you're bored at home, you don't have anything to do, you got home from a long day of work, whatever it is, and you're just sitting there like, well, I'm bored, so I'm going to crack one open, And so now it's become habitual, and it's become even more socially acceptable because of that. And now just with people also just being highly adapted to being inside and to not going out and doing things that may be different than consumption, the habits are more likely for that.
No, it definitely is, and I totally agree with you on that, because
Right.
we, in my generation, I was born in 1990, so I grew up in the 90s where we transitioned from not having that type of technology to, by the time I was 15, I had my first cell phone that had internet on it.
Yeah.
And that was when the iPhone came out, and when people started having smartphones and all that stuff. And, what I've seen in my experience, as a kid, we went outside and played.
Right.
We went to the library to look stuff up.
Exactly.
We walked to the library and looked stuff up in encyclopedias. Nowadays, kids are so overstimulated by their devices. They're, here, sit in front of this video game. Here, sit in front of this TV. Here, sit in front of this tablet. Here's my cell phone. Play some games. So that when they have nothing else going on, no meaningful activities or hobbies, then guess what? They're going to look for an escape from that boredom.
Right.
And how do people escape? Well, if you don't have good coping skills, you drink alcohol, you use drugs.
Yeah, exactly.
So what are some of the things, one of the buzzwords you just used are coping skills.
Yeah.
What are some good coping skills for people to maybe turn to when they feel like, okay, I'm bored, there's nothing to do? What's a good way to get out of that feeling? What would you suggest?
So my suggestion is any meaningful activity and hobby that you have. Most people, when they hear that term coping skills, they think it's got to be some special talent or specific thing that they have to know how to do or be good at. I can tell you, reading a book is a coping skill. Going for a walk is a coping skill. Taking a bubble bath is a coping skill. Making a good meal or eating a dessert just for a quick treat. Those are coping skills. Talking to your mom on the phone, that's a coping skill.
Hear that, Faith?
Like it's literally whatever makes you feel better in that moment. Maybe you have anxiety and you need to cope with that. Normally you drink. Well, do some meditation or some stretching or some deep breathing exercises to relax. Go get your nails done. Do something that makes you feel good. If you're a guy, go get a shave and a haircut. That helps relax. That reduces anxiety. You're having depression, take a hot shower. Watch a funny video on YouTube. Those are coping skills.
I really like that most of the things that you brought up didn't necessarily require you to buy something.
Yeah.
Because that's also a huge reason why people are staying inside more lately, is just because they don't have the financial resources to be able to maybe go get some fancy gym membership or whatever it is, but they can absolutely take a shower or cook a meal for themselves at home.
Or take a walk or
Take a
hike
walk,
or something. It doesn't bike ride. It doesn't cost anything. One of the things I took a training a while back, and they talked about people who had family members that have had addiction to alcohol, how just even in the brain is kind of set for that person of the next generation or passed down, that if they start to drink, that can really pick up alcoholism quickly into that person's system. Can you address that, please?
So there's what we call biological, environmental, and social factors involved in people becoming addicted.
Right.
And so genetic factors, biological is going to be you have a history of addiction in your family. That is a known cause of, that generational cycle of addiction.
Sure.
Also, environmental things, being raised in trauma or in a bad neighborhood, or, having bad parents or having somebody leave, not being able to cope with those things as a child can ultimately lead to alcohol use. Social cues, peer pressure, biggest
Yes.
biggest, factor in people starting to use, especially in early adolescence, high school, and college. You want to be the cool kid, right? Well, guess what? Everybody else is doing it. You know what my dad used to say is, everybody else is jumping off a bridge. Do you do too?
Do you do the same?
Only if I got a parachute. But, but the thing is, we have peer pressure our entire lives, no matter what age we are. We get peer pressure at work. We get peer pressure from our friends. We get peer pressure from our family, from relatives, and junior high, high school, elementary school, college. You want to fit in. You want to be accepted. We're social creatures, and that's just the way we are.
Right.
And so when everybody else is drinking, I'm going to have just one drink. Well, cool. That one drink is great. But now your judgment is a little bit impaired by that one drink. You might not have enough self-control to say no to a second.
Well, one of the biggest, what I would say, drinking celebrations is coming up this Sunday, which is St. Patrick's Day.
Yes.
And Faith actually had worked at a place where it was an Irish tavern.
Yes,
And
which I loved working at.
She
It was
loved
amazing.
It. She
I loved
loved
the
working
people.
there. But at the same time, like St. Patty's Day, what made that a little bit different than maybe the other days?
Oh, it was definitely intense because you get people that are really, really rowdy in there, and that's just that's a very, very small sliver of that whole prefrontal cortex. You're not judging correctly and whatnot, and you would see people getting more violent. You would see just things escalating way more quickly. Also, there were times on the job during that day where things happened that I wasn't maybe okay with. Comments were made towards me by maybe a customer and whatnot that probably would not have been made, say there wasn't that sort of social endorsement for drinking and that behavior to be present, if that makes any sense.
Sure. And so how can people help themselves on that day?
So obviously, St. Patty's Day is one of the hugest drinking holidays, every year. We have, New Year's Eve is a huge drinking holiday. Christmas is a drinking holiday. Halloween is a drinking holiday. Thanksgiving is a drinking holiday.
It's crazy because, our country keeps adding more and more of these holidays, National whatever day, this thing. There's always some occasion. There's always something there,
Well, we all know that old song, it's 5 o'clock somewhere.
Yeah.
Right.
Exactly.
And so, but the thing is, with these kind of holidays, especially for people in recovery, you have to have a plan. And I talked about this a little bit the last time I was on the show with Mike about having an exit plan for parties or gatherings or family get-togethers where there's going to be alcohol or other drugs present. Now, obviously, we're in California. Marijuana is recreationally legal, so that's a big,
Sure.
something that could be a trigger for a lot of people as well. But alcohol specifically, it's such a big thing for St. Patty's Day. We got green beer. We got all these bar crawls, pub crawls,
Right.
bar hopping, whatever, and on top of that, commercially, we see everywhere, go over there by Fresno State. You'll see a huge Fresno State Budweiser sign, Bud Light or whatever, the beer is. You see all these different advertisements for these things during these times of year that we have these big holidays. It's on TV. It's at the gas station. It's at the grocery store. It's at your restaurant. It's at the pizza place.
Little
It's
subliminal cues.
Yes, and you might not notice these things consciously, but subconsciously you're picking up on these, and that reinforces that social acceptability of alcohol. And the biggest thing that we can do for people who struggle with alcohol use is minimize those cues as much as possible. If there's a drinking holiday coming up, make plans with your sober friends to go do something else somewhere else.
Right.
If you're going to, say, a family get-together, maybe you're Irish, and you're going to go see your family for St. Patty's Day, and they're going to be drinking. Have a plan for that. Have an exit plan that says, hey, I'm going to show up, I'm going to say hi to these people, then I'm going to give an excuse to leave, and I'm going to leave. Oh, I have to work tomorrow, especially because it's on Sunday this year.
Right.
Great exit plan. Hey, as much as
Working
I'd like to
Monday
stay,
morning.
I have to work
Right.
Monday morning. I can't stay very long. I can't even have one drink because I'm driving, and just have a plan for it. There's not much we can do about the fact that alcohol is so prevalent in our communities other than educate people, put the information out there, and be supportive of those who need help with it.
Well, Sherry, I could sit here and I could talk to you all day, and I think we would all be able to contribute, something, but your knowledge is amazing. How can if we have viewers that have further questions or need assistance, how could people get in touch with you?
So with me personally, I have a business card, but you can always contact Aegis Treatment Center here in Fresno. The company I work for is Pinnacle Treatment Center. I'm a telehealth counselor that works from home for various clinics throughout California, but I'm very connected in our treatment community in Fresno, and I have access to people at all the different treatment centers. But the biggest thing is if you really need help in Fresno County and you need treatment, like right now, I'd just be a middleman. Dial 211 on your phone, and that will get you connected to our county resources that will actually help you find a treatment program that fits your needs.
That's wonderful. Well, again, Cherry, thank you so much for coming in. And I think what we discussed today was so valuable at so many different levels. And Faith, it was a pleasure having you on too, my dear, because you gave, just from that college point of view and from that Gen Z group kind
Absolutely.
of what's happening. This is Hope Rosky with Business Arts Events. It's St. Patrick's Day this Sunday. Please be careful. Take care.